Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing the Finally Fall book tag. Alright guys, so welcome to the start of another fall themed video. So I absolutely love everything that has to deal with fall. So this tag is really just celebrating that it is finally fall, finally autumn. So I have a mix of fantasy and romance books in this video. And if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Thursday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit the notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about these autumnal books. Alright, so the first prompt is, in fall, the air is crisp and clear. Name a book with a vivid setting. So not only does this book have a vivid setting, but it is unlike any other book I've ever read. So we have The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy, and this is by Megan Bannon. So I pitched this in another video and on Instagram as if Hayao Miyazaki from Studio Ghibli was tasked with making a You've Got Mail reimagining and then had to throw in zombies. So this is following Mercy, and she works at her family's undertaking business where they get bodies ready to go to the Salt Sea or the afterlife. So she absolutely loves her job, and it's described in the beginning of this book in so much detail, and it's so disgusting. So she's getting a body ready, and the body is leaking fluids, and she's totally fine with it. So anyway, that's Mercy, and then you have Heart, and Heart is a demigod, and he is in charge of killing dregs, which are essentially zombies. So the souls that are in unrest end up taking over corpses, and then those corpses are reanimated and they try to go after humans. So he kills them by stabbing them in the appendix. I don't know why. That's just how he does it. So the world is so amazing in this book. So it really does remind me of an anime. You have mail carriers that are these giant animals, and you have seahorses, but they're actually horses that just go in the sea. And I'm not describing this very well, but it just has such a whimsical atmosphere, and it's so good. So anyway, Heart ends up bringing his dead bodies to Mercy, and they absolutely hate each other. So this is an enemies to lovers story. So for some reason, upon meeting, Heart and Mercy just did not get along. So Heart is also, like I said, he's a demigod, and he just feels really lonely. So one day he writes a letter that he sends to a friend, and he doesn't actually think this letter is going to go anywhere. Well, there are these things called Niflheim, which are these giant animal mail carriers that take the letter to your heart's desire. So it ends up bringing the letter to Mercy. Now, he didn't sign it, so Mercy doesn't know who this letter is from, but she really relates to this letter, so she writes back. And they soon form this pen pal relationship, and it goes from there. And it's just such a heartwarming story, and it also is spicy. I was not expecting that from a fantasy romance. I don't know why I wasn't, because a lot of fantasy romances are spicy, but this just, I didn't think it was going to be, and it was. But I love this story. Definitely worth checking out, and like I said, it's just so unique. The next prompt is, nature is beautiful, but also dying. Name a book that is beautifully written, but also deals with some very heavy topics. So for this, I thought of Nettle and Bone. So this is a dark adult fairy tale, and we're following Mara, and she's being raised in a convent. Her older sister has married a king and is currently pregnant. So Mara goes to visit her sister and finds out that the king has been abusing her. He's constantly impregnating her. If she miscarries, he's impregnating her right away again. And he's also physically assaulting her when she's not pregnant, and she just lives this terrible life. He's also shaming her. So that is where the darker themes come in. So Mara realizes that she needs to do something to save her sister. So she ends up enlisting the help of this witch. She's not called a witch. I think she's called I forget. She's not called a witch in the book, but she's essentially a witch. And then also her fairy godmother and a demon chicken and a random soldier. And they all work together to try to bring down this king. And it was just so good. It just gave me such dark fairy tale vibes. And it's the perfect book to read in the fall. And next up we have Fall is Back to School Season. Share a nonfiction book that taught you something new. So I don't read a lot of nonfiction. The book that came to mind is The Glass Castle, which is actually a memoir that I read back in college, and I just really connected with. It is following this family, and I mean, this is not similar to my upbringing in any way. I want to start off by saying that, but these parents were just very neglectful of their children, and they were just very almost narcissistic, and they really only cared about their happiness in front of their children's happiness. So it's showing this girl that had to really raise herself and her siblings, and she did this by education and just trying to figure out a way to survive on her own. And I just found it such a powerful story, and I really love it. So highly recommend. It's kind of sad. I think they actually made a film out of it, and I remember the film not being great. So definitely read the book, but I really loved it, and it's a book that stayed with me for a very long time. Next up is, in order to keep warm, it's good to spend time with the people we love. Name a fictional family, household, or friend group that you would love to be part of. So right away, I have to say the Inner Circle from ACOTAR. I feel like if you're following my channel, you probably already know exactly what ACOTAR is about. It's following Farah, who's this human girl that ends up living in the border of the Fae realms. She kills a wolf that's actually a fairy, and then she has to go live with the High Lord of the Spring Court for payment of killing this person. And then it goes from there. The first book is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and then the second book is just the best book in the entire world, and I'm obsessed with it. So I love the Inner Circle. They are by far my favorite friend group. All of the different characters, they all have such different personalities, and I love them all. So I had to include that. But if we're going to talk about a newer friend group that I'm currently obsessed with, we have the Bonds That Tie. So this is a reverse harem paranormal fantasy romance that is just divine. And I would love to be part of this reverse harem grouping. The guys in this are they're everything. Look up fan art when you get a chance. But if you're not familiar with the Bonds That Tie series, it is following Ollie. And in the beginning of the story, she is traveling with her mother, and her mother's bonded. So in this world, bonded are kind of like bonded mates. And you typically have multiple mates. I believe Ollie has 5. And by being bonded, it actually increases your power level. So Ollie is fleeing from something with her mother, and her mother's bonded, and then there's a car accident, and everyone is killed besides Ollie. But instead of going back to be with her bonded or be reunited with her bonded, she ends up fleeing, which really angers her bonded. So they spend the next 5 years or so searching for her, and when they finally find her and bring her back, they all kind of hate each other. So this is a bully romance, and it's just so good. If you are a fan of the Zodiac Academy, you will 100% love this series. I highly recommend. Unfortunately, I've only read up to book 3. I love the audio of these books, and only the first 3 books have been released. So I'm really hoping, cross my fingers, that the next few audiobooks are released soon. But definitely, if you like fantasy romance, pick this series up. All right, so the next prompt is, the nights are getting darker, so share a dark, creepy read. So right away, I thought about Belladonna, which is a YA fantasy story, but I have been talking about that book constantly. Definitely pick it up if you want dark gothic mystery. One of my favorite YA fantasies. And then I also thought about Mexican Gothic, which I've also talked about a lot in previous videos, and that is following a girl that sister ends up getting married to this Englishman. So she ends up her sister writes her a letter saying I need help, please come save me. So our main character ends up journeying, ends up meeting the sister's husband and his very creepy father, and it's kind of like a haunted house story that has a lot of very scary imagery. But I wanted to pick some books that I don't talk about very often. So first up, we have Horror Store, and this is by Grady Hendrix. This is one of my absolute favorite Grady Hendrix books. So this is essentially taking place in a haunted IKEA. So our main character is working in retail at this IKEA. I think it's called Borscht, maybe. And she's really not going anywhere with life. It's just very mundane. And then she ends up staying overnight to train these people, and then crazy stuff starts happening. And I really like the way this book is laid out. There's different pictures of different IKEA items, an IKEA catalog, but also you see how they can be used as torture devices. And this is a book I highly recommend. I listened to the audio, but also flipped through this book physically just because there are so many really disturbing pictures, and it's so good. So one of my absolute favorites. Highly recommend. And then another creepier story that I don't hear a lot of people talk about is The Woods Are Always Watching, and this is by Stephanie Perkins. So I remember when I talked about this book last year in a TBR video, I think I said it was YA contemporary. I was wrong. This is not a YA story. This book is so unbelievably dark. There is some disgusting graphic imagery. There is a scene in particular that lives in my head rent-free, and I wish I could take it out because it is so gross. There are also check trigger warnings. There is essay. There is unaliving people, and it is it's so dark, but so good, and also takes place in a camp setting. So we're following these 2 girls who have been best friends, and they're about to graduate high school, and one of them is staying in her small town, and the other one is leaving to go to college. And they're also kind of keeping secrets from each other, so this is kind of their last hurrah before they separate. So they end up going on this camping trip, and then things start happening. There's this mysterious stranger that is following them. They might get lost, and it's so good. I read this in one sitting, But yeah, you can tell from the cover that it's definitely like horror and creepy. I just was not prepared for the amount of creepiness that is in this book. So highly recommend if you're looking for a darker book to read during the fall autumn time. The days are getting colder. Name a short, heartwarming read that could warm up somebody else's day. So for this, immediately what came to mind is Always Only You by Chloe Leese. This is the second book in the Bergman Brothers series by Chloe Leese. You can actually read all the books as standalones, so I highly recommend picking this up. This book made me cry. It was just so good. It made me cry like happy tears. So we're following Frankie, and she actually has rheumatoid arthritis, and she also is on the autism spectrum. So she is the social media marketing manager for this hockey team. And on the hockey team, we have Soren, who is just this giant, handsome guy that's kind of a nerd, and he loves Shakespeare, and he's just adorable, and he's had a crush on Frankie for a long time. So this is definitely the guy falls first. And this book was just so good. It really shows everything Frankie has to do to like deal with struggling with RA and how it impacts her life and also her autism diagnosis. And I've talked about this in other videos where there's a scene where Frankie is talking to Ziggy, who is Soren's little sister, who has also been diagnosed with autism, and she's telling her how she navigates it. So she's talking about a sensory diet and fidget necklaces and buying clothing that is tagless, and it's just, I was bawling. It's so good. I just love seeing autism rep in romance books, and I just highly, highly recommend. All of the books in this series will make you weep. I actually read this because I was vlogging or doing a collab video with Caitlin from The Love Librarian, and we were picking new to me authors to read, and she picked Chloe Leese. So happy I started the series. It is just so good and so heartwarming, and I highly, highly recommend. The colorful leaves are piling on the ground. Show us a pile of fall-colored spines. So I just happen to have a bunch of fall spines right here. So I'm going to zoom in and show you them. All right, so these are my fall spines. So first up we have For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten. This is an adult fantasy with a very creepy wood setting. And then we have Haunting Adeline, which is by H.D. Carlton. This is a dark romance, stalker and prey cat and mouse vibes. Then we have An Enchantment of Ravens, which is also a very atmospheric story. Kind of has some similarities to ACOTAR, but it's much more lyrical and has more of like trickster fae elements. Then we have The Wolf and the Woodsman, and I'm going to be honest, I DNF'd this book. It was just a little bit more graphic than I thought it was going to be, but it's following this girl that thinks she's going to be sacrificed, and then she's taken by the woodsman, and that's all I really know, because I didn't finish it. Then we have These Hollow Vows, which is one of my favorite fantasy romance duologies by Lexi Ryan. It is YA, deals with fae and love triangles, and it's just so good. Under that is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. I have not read this yet, but I think it's like an adult fantasy involving witches and I think a feminist society, and also might deal with Anne Boleyn, but I could be completely making that up. Next, we have Book of Night by Holly Black. This is Holly Black's first dive into adult fantasy, and I really enjoyed it. I know it kind of has like controversial ratings. Some people love it, some people hate it. I really liked it. Then we have Year of the Witching by Alex Henderson. This is about a girl that's living in this very patriarchal society, and she is seen as an outcast. And then she ends up meeting some witch spirits, and it's dark and just amazing. And last up, we have the Atlas Six, which you can kind of see. This is the fairy lead version, and this is following 5 young academics that are all competing to be part of the Alexandrian Society. So yeah, I just thought all of these spines kind of had like fall vibes. Fall returns every year. Name a favorite you would like to reread soon. So for fantasy, I have to say ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses. It is just my ultimate comfort read. I also want to go back and reread Throne of Glass. I feel like I read that during the quarantine, and I just flew through that series. I read that entire series in a week, and I'm sure there are details that I missed. I was just like so engrossed in the story. So I want to go back and reread that. But in terms of romance, I honestly just finished the Off Balance series by Lucia Franco, and I already want to go back and reread it. This is following Rhea, who wants to become an Olympic gymnast. So her father ends up sending her to this gym that is coached by his friend Kova, and Kova and Rhea end up forming this relationship, and it is age gap, and it is just so good and so toxic in the beginning, and there is so much angst, but I bawled in the last book. Like the last chapter of the last book, my heart just melted. So I really want to go back and reread the series already. It's so good. And then another one I want to go back and reread is the Stay With Me series by Nicole Fiorina. This is another book or another series that I actually just read this year, but I loved it. So this is following Mia, who is this girl that has been diagnosed as like a schizophrenic, I believe, or a like antisocial personality disorder, and she just doesn't have feelings, and she is making her family's life miserable. So they end up sending her to this college that is also kind of like an asylum a little bit. I think it's called like a reformatory college. So when she gets there, she meets Ollie, and Ollie Masters is this guy that has the exact opposite diagnosis as Mia. He just feels too deeply. And I love Ollie Masters with all of my heart. He is one of my top book boyfriends, and I just really enjoyed this series. It's chaotic, and it's kind of crazy, and so much happens. I think I compared it to like a Spanish soap opera. Like, it is all over the place, but in the best way. So if you have not read either of these series yet, I highly, highly recommend. And this next prompt is not book related, but it is: fall is the perfect time for cozy reading nights. Share your favorite cozy reading accessories. So for this, I have an obsession with fall scented candles, pumpkin spice, apple, just anything. Bath and Body Works leaves. Oh my goodness, I love that scent so much. Any sort of fall candle, my entire house is just filled with them. We also have fall wallflowers and just fall scents. I can't get enough. Also, cozy fall blankets. I have so many Halloween decorations, and I also have a ton of different like Halloween blankets that we pull out in October. So yeah, I love everything that has to do with fall. And last up is spread the autumn appreciation and tag some people. So if you are watching this video, consider yourself tagged. Some specific people I'm gonna tag are Isa from Fun Fantasy Books, just because I'm very excited to see what her answers are, and I just love her content. And then Tori from Novel Life, only because I'm pretty sure her favorite season is also fall, so she might enjoy these questions. And then Bex Reads, only because she is so great with like including so many people in her content, so I want to make sure to tag her. And then Hannah Blackwell, because I've been talking to her recently and we have some very fun upcoming stuff. So anyway, those are all of the people I tag, and I hope you guys do this video. All right, guys, that's it for my Finally Fall book tag. Please let me know down below what is your favorite fall read. And I said this already, I post new videos every Thursday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.